Bible reading this morning is headed Blind Bartimaeus Receives His Sight. Then they came to Jericho as Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city. A blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. He shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he is calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. And the blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see Jesus." "Go," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you." And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road.
I am very aware that whilst this is a story of Jesus walking down the road and encountering Bartimaeus, it also acts as a parable because many of us are blind to things. We want to see Jesus more, we want to see love more, we want to see peace more, and we cry out to Jesus on a regular basis. Our next two guests are people who have cried that out. I've got to hear a podcast that they did recently and heard their story, and I'm really excited to bring you the opportunity to hear the journey of two people who cried out to Jesus and ended up in the most amazing of spaces. So Mama Glenyce and David, would you come and join me up here? Will you welcome our guests this morning? Now, where do you guys call home? Uganda. All right. You didn't start at Uganda.
I did not start.
You did start in Uganda.
Started in Uganda.
Southern Uganda, yes. Right. You have an amazing story about coming to Christ, but one of the things I'd like you to invite these guys to hear about is, what was your first church that you started?
I don't remember its name. I was young. I don't think it had a name.
There you go.
Yes. The one I started later on, which still stands, is Divine Love Church.
Fantastic.
But the one I planted as a child, we didn't give it a name.
I'd like to suggest a name.
It's no longer there.
Under the Tree.
Under the Tree.
And how old were you when you started this ministry, Under the Tree, as I'm going to call it?
I might have been around 10, 12.
At the age of 10 or 12, he starts a church under a tree, if I may, by staking out with sticks and then banana palms. Is that right?
Banana fiber.
Banana fiber, a little patch, and he led church under a tree. That's faith. Did you understand where it was going to lead you?
Not at all.
No.
I now think that I don't even understand what I was doing.
There you And that is a gift. Glenyce, your journey is not indifferent with that, I don't know what I'm doing. What was the part of your story where you might have tapped into that, I don't know what I'm doing?
That's every day.
Yes. What led you to that every day of I don't know what I'm doing?
Goodness me, that's a question.
I really don't know.
You sold your house.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I sold my house. I sold my house and my car and gave away my dog and moved to Uganda and bought a hospital with my son.
Have any of you bought a hospital recently? No? Okay. I want to leave that kind of hanging because I'd like you guys to tell your stories. We have the opportunity, I'm going to suggest, of challenging you in most of your ages that life and ministry and mission and being blind stops today, potentially. I'm going to hand over to you guys.
Good morning. We are very pleased, we are very honored to be here. As you have heard, I just want to confirm that I am David Livingstone and the African name is Zijjan. It used to be Zijjan and I sliced it into half to make life easy for those who would want to pronounce it. I am Ugandan, and from Uganda I bring greetings from the church and from my large family, wife and children, etc. I am in Uganda, I am a legal professional. I am also a legislator. I'm a member of parliament in Uganda. But today, I just want to lay a background of our story, and the speaker of the morning is my mother, Glenyce. I just will give the background of how it all started. Pastor has told a little bit of it, but what we desire to do, and which is the compass of all our engagements, is bringing dignity to Africa. And bringing dignity to Africa is a motivation birthed out of the general picture of Africa when it is told on the global stage, whether in geopolitics or economics, etc., that Africa is not or was not perceived to be the place of glamour, the place of hope, the place of beauty, of what is positive. And the gospel is good news, so we want to tell the gospel, the good news, so that Africa adapts or is transformed, metamorphosed through the good news, that when you hear Africa, what comes to your heart and mind is a place of hope, a place of beauty, a place of aspirations, a place of healthy, beautiful, adorable children. And our playing field especially was and is children, but it keeps on growing. I always tell my mother that vision is like an onion. When you peel off one layer, you realize there is another. You peel off that and you see another. So Uganda is on the map of Africa, as you can see it drawn by the hand of God there in the cloud. Uganda would be in that red spot. It's a small country with 48 million people. And today I will talk about children, especially as regards bringing dignity to African children. I was raised and bred by a single mother. My mother had 7 of us. We did not have a father in the home. She had 7 children with 5 different fathers, some children Catholic, some Protestant, some Muslim, and some animist. I am the 6th of the 7 in that order. We were 4 boys and 3 girls. owing to that burden of bringing 7 children up plus nephews and nieces, we were like 17 children in one grass-thatched hut. My mother, out of being overwhelmed, she had to seek false comfort in alcohol. And so she abused alcohol and was very dysfunctional. She loved us dearly, but she didn't, her love language wasn't affection, owing to her challenge. So she had a different kind of love language, which involves what we now would call gross and aggravated child abuse. She beat us properly. She would beat us thoroughly. She would step on your head and beat the living daylights out of you. At one point, she attempted to cut me with a machete because I had had a fight with my little sister who follows me. So she, fortunately, in Africa, we become commandos when we are very young. So I was able to get the wisdom of God, and I blew the light off. It was a candle. So there was darkness, and she was drunk. She couldn't see. She stood between the door and the outside. There was a bit of light, so I could see her figure with the machete. And she sent one of my sisters to get the candle lit so that she could see me and cut me. And I managed to slither just about near her feet. And as the light started coming in, I shot out of the house and spent that night out in the field. It was a very long and memorable night. She did not hate me. I believe that I was one of her most loved children. But this was a very overwhelmed mother who raised children single-handedly. We had a very good relationship. Every day she would get drunk and she would come staggering home. I washed her feet every day for years to make sure she does not go to bed with dirty feet. And I gave her food to make sure that alcohol would not corrode her stomach. And I made her bed every day. So it was a good relationship. It just had different dynamics. So I didn't see my dad until I was 17 years. And in Africa, we name our children after our ancestors. There is a theory in Africa which says the dead are not dead. All right? So where you have lost loved ones, you call them back by naming your children after them. So it's very important for an African young man to know his lineage. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-grandfather. I did not know any of those. So at 17, I told Mom, I want to see my father. Show me my father, because I will soon begin having children of my own. So she took me to the village. My father lived 1 hour away from me, but for 17 years, we did not meet. He did not look for me. So one day my mother caves in, takes me to the village. That 1 hour was full of excitement. I looked forward to meeting my dad for the first time. I would imagine his looks, that I probably resembled him. In Africa, it's an affirmation to tell a boy child, you resemble your father. Or a girl child, you look like your mother. So I was hoping that I resembled my dad. I get there, he had 9 other sons from several mothers. The other boys were shorter than I was. They were darker than I was. And here I turn up in Africa, I'm considered light-skinned. And I didn't look like them. And that was equivalent to failing a DNA test. So I was told that I was not his son because I did not resemble him. After waiting for 17 years to see him for the first time. So I left that home dejected, rejected, and lost. I came and got a job in a YWAM, Youth with a Mission base, as a HADS boy. And I lost my brothers to AIDS. My eldest brother had said, David, take care of the children. Through taking care of goats at YWAM, and through the Baptist Theological Seminary there, the gospel was preached to me. and I believed in Jesus. Long story short, I ended up in a YWAM discipleship training school. They ran a course called The Father Heart of God. I read a book by Floyd McClung, The Father Heart of God, and for the first time I heard that I was fearfully and wonderfully made, that God knit me together in my mother's womb, that God saw my unformed parts, that I was not an accident, regardless of the circumstances under which I was conceived. I wasn't an accident. God knew me. God knit me together. He took time to knit me together. He saw me before I was made. And prior to hearing that, I would go to that YWAM pit latrine and I would kneel down. And I would say, God, I feel this filthy. I feel dirtier than this toilet. And in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, pit latrines can be really gross. But I felt that that was what I could identify with for purposes of identity. So I prayed, I said, Lord, your blood can make me clean. Wash me that I may be as white as snow. I am your child, etc. And through the training, I was healed. I remember one morning before class, I looked into the mirror, and for the first time, I was shocked by how handsome I was. I had never seen myself that way. But I thought, wow, I like what I see. Indeed, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm handsome. I'm a hunk, actually. But there are so many children like me who have never been hugged by a biological father, who do not know this good news. So I left that place with passion, that I would tell the story of God as the father to the fatherless and defender of widows, and a God whose heart beats for orphaned children. James 1:27 says, religion that is true and unstained before God and the Father is this, that we visit orphans and widows in their affliction and keep ourselves unstained in this world. And that indeed if we bring up children in the way they should go, they will not depart from it when they grow up. So I started a ministry and called it Father's Divine Love Ministries. That they would know love, but that love would be divine, and that love would be the love of a father, and that father is God. And that by knowing that, their dignity would be restored. That the African child will also be looked at and be celebrated on the same platform as children elsewhere in the world. So I started taking care of the three that my brother left behind, and there is a saying that birds of the same feathers flock together. So I ended up in a church, and I got attracted to my high school friend, Sarah, who is now my wife of 21 years. She was also taking care of orphans and vulnerable children because she had lost her own siblings. So together with her mother, they were taking care of 7 children. When Sarah and I got married, on the first night of our marriage, we had 11 children to start with, before we could have our own. We did not need to pray and fast to find the will of God for our lives, the calling of God. We started by, interacting with the situation around us, and that was bringing in children, giving them shelter, sharing our bread with them, taking them into schools, giving them hope. We got married on the 20th of December 2003. By April, I had been kicked out of the house where we were renting because the children were too many and they were running down the property. But God began to provide in amazing ways. I have read the biography of George Mueller. He took care of orphaned children and God provided miraculously every single day. And I can tell you this morning that 20 years plus of taking care of children, we have never gone hungry. I used to go hungry before I got orphan children, before I got children around me. I've taken care of hundreds, we've not gone hungry. In Uganda, we lose 300 children to malaria every day, even though it takes $1 to treat a child of malaria if you begin at the right stage. God has been gracious, we've never lost a child. Over 20 years. So the children, you see these photos today here, I'll be very fast because my mother her appetite is rising. She wants to come and supplement the story. The photos are not very clear, but this is Anisha, one of my daughters, and this is Amla, one of my daughters as well. These two are sisters. They are siblings. One follows the other. We were at a funeral, my wife and I were at a funeral, and they were burying their mother. She had succumbed to AIDS. And after burying their mother, the head of the clan stood up and said, "The deceased has left 2 children. We don't know what to do with them. Who wants them?" You know, this is how adoption applications in our context work. My wife and I look at each other and we're like, yeah. So we'll have them. That was the application and approval of adoption for these 2 girls. They are now beautiful. They are grown. They're in advanced classes of their high school. Amla is very brilliant. She could be an engineer. Anisha wants to be independent and generous. She wants to be a rich lady going into business. The pictures are a bit blurry. The pictures are good, but I think it's the lighting here. That's me and Sarah and the biological children, Rafa, Melody, Maranatha, and Mehitabel. Rafa is a big man. He's 20. He's playing pre-professional soccer in the United States. Melody is pursuing sciences. She wants to be a doctor. Maranatha wants to be a lawyer some days and some days not. And Mehitabel wants to be everything.
But our picture's clearer than that one, so we're getting a good one.
Oh, really? Ah, okay. You're enjoying a better menu than I. These are some of the children in the program we created. It's written that the comfort with which we have been comforted, we comfort others also. So when these children find shelter and a home, we encourage them to take the message of comfort and encouragement to the children in the communities. So they formed a thing called child ambassadors. They go into the communities advocating for the rights of the children and being innovative. That which you see over there is one of their innovations. It's called a tip tap. Now, in our context, we need to wash hands before we go to the lavatory and wash hands when we come out of the lavatory. What people do is they will touch the tap, open it, wash hands, go to the tap if they have. Usually a jerry can. Come from the lavatory, touch the jerry can, wash hands, and then put it back again. It's simply an exchange of bacteria, of germs. So children thought in order to mitigate that, my mother likes to say, ameliorate, they engineered this tip tap. It contains water, it's on a string, the blue object is a bar of soap, down on the ground is rocks so that the water can dissolve, can go down, can silt, and then there is a wooden thing where they step. It's like a pedal of the car. So you get there, step on that pedal, it will tilt the jerry can, touch the soap, wash hands, and release the pedal, and the jerry can goes back into an upright position. You've washed hands without touching anything. You've not exchanged any germs, so that the children can be healthier. It is the child ambassadors' innovation. And they went around the community. They almost became celebrities doing that. And there they are in the communities. Dignity Preschool, again, we're teaching, in Uganda, they pile children in classrooms. They herd them into classrooms. And we're saying that is not the appropriate way. We have the Montessori curriculum, and we are teaching children, by children learning to touch and interact with their world in an environment of dignity. The work of responding to the need of orphans and vulnerable children and widows in the communities birthed the church. In that church plant, which I had the privilege of pastoring for 16 years before I retired, it is not the church which birthed the orphans base, it is orphan care which birthed the church. We moved into this community, started having home fellowship with the children. On the first Sunday, 27 people joined us from the community. The second Sunday, 43. It became a church and started growing, and it has been in place for 18 years now. I retired in 2014. One of the successes of a leader is to work yourself out of the job. So raised the leadership team there. We do pastoral training, and they took over the job, and I was able to veer into the marketplace and into other domains of influence. Agriculture, we build homes for widows in what we call, that's church again, in what we call this extreme makeover. I copied this approach from the US, where they just come and pull down a structure, and they will take the family to a place, and then they will extremely make over their home. So we find a widow who is sleeping in very ramshackle places. We take care of them. We pull down the structure. I mobilize mission teams. They come over from all over the world, and we build widows these houses where the widow has a bedroom, and then the children have a bedroom and a living room. That was one of the finished products by a team from Colorado. Like that, then we have another children's base. It's called Peniel, from where Jacob wrestles with God, and God touches him, and he names the place Peniel, saying, I have seen God face to face, that children would see the face of God as we bring parenting to them. That's Helen, one of the mothers. Sorry if I'm speaking very fast. I'm really trying to do a good job speaking a language which is near your language. You realize I don't speak your language. I speak English. I don't speak Australian. And English is my fourth language. So if you hear that I'm too fast or too hard to understand, just give me some grace, because if I ask you to speak my own African language, you will think that the tribulation has come too early. That's more children there for you. Very happy children playing all the time, doing child rights advocacy, child ambassadors again, playing on a trampoline brought by a team from Australia. This is a classroom in the Montessori. College education, most ministries stop at high school. We want to take it beyond that. We educate children through universities. We have produced engineers, lawyers, doctors, nurses, etc., changing Africa one professional at a time, a professional whom God can use. A doctor whom God can use, an engineer whom God can use, a lawyer who is not a liar, a lawyer whom God can use. And we've had many calls. This is Chris, picked this one up when he was really young and living up on a tree. Very skillful, you know. If you spend a night in a tree, the chances of falling are very, very high. But these kids are geniuses. They know which branch to lean on, and they can be off for a night. Now he's a graduate, and he is our plumber, actually. He does all the logistical coordinations. We have many procurement professionals, engineers, software engineers. I mean, children can become anything. They just need someone to believe in them, give them time, and walk alongside them. This one is a mother of twins, so I am a grandfather, actually. Got her very young, educated her through college, married in a glorious marriage, gave birth to the first child, gave birth to twins, Susan. In Africa, we call those Nalongo, mother of twins. But from infancy, from nowhere. This is what, when I look at these smiles and changed lives, this is where dignity to Africa begins to come home. This is our base, the main base, the headquarters. Several miraculous stories around there. Of course, in Africa, evangelism rallies still work. So those are some of the things I really love to do. We put up stages and sing and dance. In Africa, it's still not illegal to dance. Even in church, it's not illegal to dance. Yes. And of course, we take them to the water in Lake Victoria and baptize them. There I was baptizing 63 out of an Easter harvest. We do pastoral leadership training. That was lunch. After training, and ladies and gentlemen, you know, when I was being trained, they said, David, whenever you given an opportunity to speak, stand up, speak up, shut up. I do well on the first two. I stand up well, I speak up well. Shutting up is really still a work in progress. I just don't know how to shut up. But perhaps the best way to shut up is by shutting up. So I have had the privilege of your attention, and I've ruined my mother's life really, because people's attention span is very short. So if there is an African rambling in a foreign language for 27 minutes and then they say, come and speak, it becomes very, very difficult speaking to people who are hearing but no longer listening. So I want to invite my mother to actually do that, to speak in hopes that people will still be listening. I adopted Mama Glenyce sometime in 2019. We met in 2014 at first. I came here in Australia. We remained in touch. I had spent some 14 hours in an airport terminal in Bangkok, and I knew how hard that was. I was going to spend another 10 hours in Johannesburg airport while Aussies flew back to Sydney. And she looked at me and said, where are you going to stay? I said, I'll stay here in the airport. She said, no, I'll put you in a hotel. She put me in a hotel for the night. And in reciprocating that, I chose to adopt her as my mother. Usually the stories of adoption, the parent adopts the child. Ours is unique. The child adopted the parent. In every general rule, there are exceptions. So ours is the exception to the general rule. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please receive my mother, Glenyce, to speak. And I will pay back by going to sit.
Okay, you're allowed to sit, yes. Wow, what an introduction is that? How can maybe I should just say amen. Okay, so I'll tell you a bit. I'm not sure where the no?
Is there a second bit on the PowerPoint?
There's a second PowerPoint. Okay. All right, so I can just fill you in a little bit. As David said, we met in 2014. And I was on a mission trip to Uganda at that stage, and we arrived really late at night in Entebbe Airport, and we were waiting for somebody to pick us up at the airport. Jennifer's just handing out brochures for anybody who hasn't received them. So we were waiting in Entebbe Airport and waiting, and nobody arrived. So we got a taxi and took a night in a hotel, and then David arrived the next morning. He doesn't remember much about that first meeting, but I certainly do. I'd retired from government work, and then I ended up I worked at Churches of Christ head office in Sydney for quite a few years, and then went and did mission work. And I did some work helped out with some GMP things, but my heart was in Africa. Jennifer and I had lived in Zambia. I went to school there for 2 years, and from that time I say God put a passion in my heart for Africa. So it's when God puts a passion in your heart, you can't really explain it. So so David's told you the story of our meeting. So this is the hospital in Uganda, our story. So that's the distance between Uganda and Australia. And that shows you the size of Australia in comparison to Africa. So Australia's a big country, but Africa's huge. And our focus is bringing dignity to Africa. So this was David in 2017 when he came to Australia after our first meeting in 2014. And then we were on this is the mission trip where we really connected in a special way. So in January in 2019 we had an induction service where I was inducted as, not induced, I was inducted as his mum. And that's a celebration we had with the family, and pastors from all around came and prayed over us. It was an overwhelming situation, and I get very emotional when I talk about it, so I'll move on because it just really is. I've never been married and never had children, so that made it all the more special. I had to wait till I was 64 to become a mum, a mother-in-law and a grandma all in one day. And these are the grandchildren. And this is a Christmas celebration. Then we formed a company. We had talked about David coming to Australia and the family coming to Australia, but it was too hard. And the other thing is that David's got qualifications and he's got a lot of exposure in Uganda. In Australia, he would have to start from nothing. So it was easier for me to go to Africa, to Uganda. So I came back and I put my house on the market on the 20th of May 2022, and on the 26th of May it sold. So then, while that was in the process, we had looked at doing some commercial ventures to raise money to fund the work that we do. And because David had travelled for many years raising funds to look after the children, but it's getting harder and harder to get funds, and people have so many claims on them now. And we believe that if God's given us abilities, it's not right for us to go and put our hand out for handouts when God has given us skills that we can use. We desperately do need assistance, but we also have the skills that God has given us, and it's our role to use those skills. So while we were looking at what we could do, this hospital came on the market. And it had been built in 2013, but had been allowed to run down. And they weren't meeting their payments, so the bank was forcing a sale. So he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Okay." Once I'd sold my house, that was the biggest decision for me to make. Once I'd sold that and my car, I didn't really have to think about much else. That was the step. The children of Israel, different people say to me, "Oh, you're so brave." And I said, "No, I'm not brave at all. I'm just doing the next step that's in front of me." The children of Israel, God promised to take them to the promised land, but nothing happened until they took the step. If they had just sat there in Egypt, nothing would have happened. But they had to put their faith in action. And so that's what I did. We went through the what ifs, what if this, what if that, what if... David had already gone down the track far ahead of me. And then once I just said, "That's it, I'm going." So then we bought the hospital. And these are some of the before and after photos of it. As I say, it was really in poor condition when we bought it. It looked okay from the outside, the reception on the far side. It was very dark and dingy and dirty looking, and we've totally renovated it and opened it up. That was the entrance, and it just says a sign, "Get well soon," but it looks so dismal that you certainly didn't feel good going there. And the table with the red and blue on it, that was the condition of hospital tables there. So when you go to hospital there, you have to take your own sheets, your own everything. In fact, your family comes and cooks for you. and the conditions were just appalling. So yeah, and that's just some of the wards, what they were like. The dental chair on the left is what was there, and the dental chair on the right is what we've got now. We got a container through Rotary and through the people of Gawler Church of Christ. They helped put a container together, and we've got some equipment now, really good equipment. That's an unfinished general ward at the hospital that we're renovating. So Glen's Dignity Hospital started. So this is the children's outpatients. The theatre is the middle building, and then a general outpatients department. And this is an eye clinic that we had. The beds had to be totally refabricated. They were in terrible condition with rust and everything, so we had to take them to be refabricated. So now we've started to do en-suites in the maternity rooms. They just had just a big room, and they would use pit latrines and outside showers for maternity patients. And we said, you can't do that. And if I went to hospital, I wouldn't like to have to go and use a pit latrine and a shower outside. So we put these in. So we're leading in that area, more of the beds. And a renovation work starting in the reception area. So these are just different ones. So the Sunday before we had a big official opening of the hospital. It was a very big affair, and I think there at least 3,000 people came to it. But the Sunday before, we had the hospital dedicated. So the pastors in the area and prayer teams came, and we went through the hospital and prayed over it. And that was to me, that was more important than the official opening. So we set it aside. So then this was the official opening of the hospital, and that. So yeah, I know David's playing there. So he's trying to get the one going with a bit of. We don't need to concentrate on that one. This is the Speaker of the House of the Parliament was to come and open, but she couldn't make it. And she sent her husband, so he was signing the visitors' book. So we ordered a red carpet, but that was the equivalent of the red carpet. So do you want me to go back, David, or? Okay. Okay, all right. Playing with us, yeah. So this is beautiful Sarah standing next to David. We couldn't do what we do without Sarah. She's just amazing. The work she does behind the scenes is just incredible. So yes, this was on the opening. I'll keep going. Oh, you got it now? There's a bit of colour and movement in this one with all the dancing but I don't know that it's going to work out. We'll skip it. So yeah. Oh dear. Oh, now what have you done?
Don't worry.
Okay, I'm not worried. Okay, so we're up and running. So we got this fantastic container, and in the container we've got a mobile scanner, and that's unbelievable in Uganda to have one of those. So that's made a huge difference. So we've got the fixed one, but now we've got a mobile one. We've got all these sheets too. We got a microscope. We've got the best equipped laboratory in Ginger. And so even the government hospital refers patients to our hospital for blood transfusions and supplies. So since we've been open, we've had over 30 babies born at the hospital, I get very excited. So each baby that's born is given a baby wrap. Here we call them wraps, over there we call them receivers. And on the wrap is written Glen's Dignity Hospital, Psalm 139 verse 14, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. So every baby is given one of those, whether they're Muslim, animists, non-believers, Christians, whatever. And I ask every time if I can pray over the baby, and I've never had a mother say no. They always get overwhelmed and say, oh, that's lovely. So these are, the ones are, the two, they're together, they were twins born by cesarean section. Because I've never been a mum, I've never held a baby so tiny. You know, to hold a baby that's only a few minutes old, it's overwhelming. And I always send David pictures of, another baby. The funny thing is, you know, I would never admit that I wanted to be a mum. I would never tell anybody, even my sister, I'd never say, if anybody said you're motherly, I'd say, no, I'm not a mother, don't call me that. Because I wasn't. I hadn't been physically a mother, and it was too painful to even admit. But El Roy, the God who sees, he knew. And at 64, he answered that. Oh, don't talk about that. gets a bit emotional. So the guy in the blue shirt is a pastor who comes for a treatment. He's a real favourite of the hospital. We have sickle cell clinic. Sickle cell is a major illness in Africa, kills many people, and it can be treated and managed if it's caught in the early stages. So we have a sickle cell clinic. We have the Glenyce Dignity Foundation. As everything we say, everything we do has the word dignity in it. And that's such an important thing to get across to people. So we have the foundation, and some of the work of the foundation is doing outreach to the islands. These islands, now in Sydney, if you say somebody lives on an island, they're wealthy. You know, that's the wealthy people live there. In Uganda, if you live on an island, you're the poorest of the poor. Like, you are so poor. I couldn't believe it when I first went on the island. And to get to the island, I've got to get in this big boat. And climbing in and out of the boat, I've now learned that you don't wear a dress when you go and climb in and out of the island, the boat. It's just not the done thing. So, but going to the islands, they're unbelievable. You know, their houses are made of mud. And then the rain comes and the lake rises, and that's the end of their house. And they've got to start all over again. There's a lot of incest on the island. There's a lot of criminals live on the island because there's no police on the islands, so people run and hide there. There's no electricity and there's no running water. But there are a lot of people living there. They're fishermen and subsistence farmers. So we go to the islands. When we got the container full of equipment, the packing that around the operating tables and the machinery and things like that was sanitary napkins. Now, I know this isn't, you know, it's mixed company and we don't talk about these things in Australia very much, but these girls just could not believe it. We've been able to take sanitary napkins to these schools and distribute them. Do you know they were cheering and jumping up and down to have their own things? So we're also going to teach them to make their own products. So this was another place. And now they want me to go back and speak at their graduation. These girls at the end of this year, they're so excited. So this is on the island, one of the clinics that we attend, we do. And it's Dr. Eddie, who's our hospital administrator. He's an incredible man, a very humble man. And he just does so much for the hospital. This house behind him, that's one of the houses that's been destroyed, and people are still living in there. So we have volunteers. We love volunteers. We love volunteers. I'm 70 and I'm doing this work. There's no age limit. We love, you know, while there's life, there's hope. And I wrote because I send newsletters every month. And if you're interested in getting a newsletter, there's a folder up the back you can put your name on. But I wrote on it, there's a saying, it's not over till the fat lady sings, and I haven't started yet. So, so yeah, these are some more volunteers that have come and just make a difference. You know, that on the island, they hardly ever see white people, hardly ever. And they follow around on me. All the little kids gather on me. So I have 5 children on that hand, 5 children on that hand. They'll grab my elbows and they'll hold on to my pants too, you know. And I'm a bit like the Pied Piper. I'm always worried in case my pants go, but so far everything hasn't. It's been fine. So just some of the health issues faced in Uganda. Doctor-patient ratio is 1 to 25,000 people. 1 doctor for 25,000 people. Nurse-patient ratio is 1 to 11,000. Road fatalities in 2023 was 4,179, an increase of 30% on 2022. But when you're there, you can understand why. The World Health Organization recorded 12.7 million malaria cases in 2022. 17,500 of those resulted in death. Malaria costs Uganda's economy 500 million per year. 500 million per year. That's just staggering. And as David mentioned, child deaths due to malaria per day are 301. 70% of all outpatient cases and 50% of admissions for children aged under 5 years of age are malaria cases. So at the moment we're raising funds for an intensive care unit, a mobile, an ambulance, because people can die just because they can't get into a decent facility or even be treated on the spot. And we're also establishing the Glenyce Dignity School for Health Sciences, where we'll train paramedics, pharmacists, laboratory technicians and down-the-track nurses. This is our current ambulance, so can you imagine if somebody in your family needed attention and you called the ambulance and this is what turned up, and yet this is good. So it's a dire situation. And the ambulance drivers are just drivers. They're not trained in first aid. They wouldn't know first aid. And often the ambulance comes and it's just one person. And not all the ambulance drivers even have a licence. So this is the ambulance we're trying to raise funds for. That's properly kitted out. So the cost of an intensive care ambulance is 184,500 Australian dollars. And this is a diagram of the school that we're establishing for training purposes. So we do give tax deductions for the money for the ambulance, and that's our website, but it's also listed on the brochure. But since we've been here in Australia, we've been blessed with some donations at different places. David and I, we will go and speak, we will speak anywhere to anyone about the work. I was in the bank in Gawler on Friday and I gave brochures to the girls in the bank. I don't know what they'll do with them, but it doesn't matter, I'll talk to anybody. But we have a terrible situation there with power outages. You never know when the power's going to go off. And running a hospital, that's a serious situation. But we were able to raise... with donations that we've received, to send money, and while we've been here, they've installed solar, so that they've got solar lighting in the wards, because the lights would go out and then you couldn't see anything. Because when the lights go out in Africa, it's black. It's very black. So this is the lighting that Dr. Eddie sent to us to show us that the money that we've been able to send has installed lighting, and this is the courtyard of the hospital to show the security, because security is a big thing there too. So yes.
I have now switched off all the other lights, the electricity. We've remained only on solar, and that's how the light is. So that's now the outside solar lighting. I've just left on for some to see. We also managed to put in the sights. So that's how it is lighting outside. Let me go inside and show you.
So this is our main reception area.
So this is inside. The rooms.
This is going up to, that's a treatment room, and then going up to the emergency area. Yeah. So we've got lights in all of that, and that's happened just in these last few weeks while we've been in Australia. So we say Asante Sana, which is thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're so grateful for the support and for people's attention. And if you're interested, we'd love to talk to you more. And we thank you for the opportunity of coming and sharing just a bit of, El Roy, the God who sees, Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. And he provides and he sees when we least expect it, and when we think we're unworthy, he sees and he knows. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much. Hopefully you're staying for a cuppa afterwards. Look, the stories around this, even Jen, who's sitting here, oh, don't do that, I'll tear up as well. Even her story about getting that container over and how long it got locked up on the docks is just, the story goes on, and yet God keeps providing. There really is no reason for us to complain, really. With the ratios of doctors to patients, yes, we complain about ramping and we complain about service, but when you see what others around the world are dealing with, we really are blessed and in a lucky land. However, Glenyce started this ministry as just the next step that she followed, and they're responding to the life of the people around them. In her interview, she said, I could have just retired and I could have gone down to the shops with my girlfriend and had coffees. Instead, she sold up her home and moved over to Uganda to be a part of a bigger story. She, in the interview, says that some days she's looking at the bank account, looking at her fridge and going, this should be an interesting week ahead. So, just because that's happening, don't think that they are flush with cash. They are living on that line. So if you feel led today, please have a chat to them and see where the Lord leads you. But on the other hand, may it inspire you to be there for others, to take up your banner and to care for the people around you. I'm going to pray for you both, and then we're going to sing a song and then go into communion. And what better song than Lead Me to the Cross? Will you pray with me? Ever and always creating God, we thank you for the opportunity to hear a story beyond ours, to hear a story of amazing interactions, of scary nights and hopeful days. Lord God, we ask you to bless Glenn's Dignity situations as she partners with her son David. May they continue to make a difference in their environment. May they inspire us to make a difference in ours. Lord, your kingdom come. It's your will that's done. We lift up these two amazing people in their faithfulness, for Jenny and the church in Gawler who have backed this and been a part of it longer. Lord God, we just thank you that you have given us so that we can give others. Meet us now at your table as we ask to be led to the cross. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.